Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you are new. My name is Heather. I'm a homeschooling mom of 3 kids, elementary, middle/high school, and high school age. We're going into our 13th year homeschooling this year. Today is going to be a continuation of my 2023-2024 homeschool planning series, so let's get started. Okay guys, it has been a little bit of time since I last sat down with you to chat about homeschool planning for the new homeschool year, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I have a few different things that I want to go over. I was going to make this into 2 videos, but I just do not have the time to do that, so we'll see how long it's going to be. Hopefully it won't be too long. So the first place that I want to actually start is organizing all of your new homeschool materials. I think in my last video I was talking about all of the materials that I had purchased, making all kinds of decisions on which curriculum and resources we were going to use for all of the subject areas that we need to cover in my state. But the next step really is to get all of that information organized. And I do have a vlog. I have a Get It All Done With Me vlog where I went through and organized all of my books and put them in the right order. They are all behind me right here. And I know if you've seen any of my videos from last year, you will know that I was not quite sure where I wanted these books to be housed during the year. Last year, I also had books on my shelf right here in my office. I think that it will work this year, and the reason is because we actually put another bookshelf in my living room, which has a lot of reference books and Bible resources. So I got those off of this shelf, and so I do have a little bit more space now to work with. So that is really the next step for me. It's to get all of my books in order, to know which books are going to be in which parts of the year. And then I sit down and I work through all of those books and the order of those books, and I will make a plan. Let me see if I can find it here. In this yearly planning section in my Erin Condren teacher planner. I did have an initial setup video. If you're interested in seeing that, that is just the very initial stages of getting my teacher planner set up for homeschool planning. But what I do with these boxes is I will put important events and dates that are happening each month of the year, but I will also put the books that we should be working on in the different months. So it is books from Sunlight, which is the main curriculum that we use in our homeschool, but it is also any Brave Writer resources that we will be using. I did do an entire video on some Brave Writer choices, so it did actually change some of this stuff for me. This was preliminary planning, which is why I did it on sticky notes. And then I got the new Brave Writer book selections. They did 2 live streams. In fact, I will leave a link for those live streams in the description box or the website in general. And you can see what all of their book selections for all of their different guide levels. They have Quill, which is for pre-readers. They have Dart, which is early elementary, Arrow is late elementary, middle school, Boomerang is upper middle school, high school, and then Slingshot is college-bound high school. So they had a lot of really great boomerangs and slingshots this year that correspond to books that we're already reading or books that I want my kids to read, or that they have recently read and I want to do a guide for. So I'll have a link for that video as well. So that did change some of this preliminary planning. I haven't quite gotten all of these boxes done. Well, I haven't actually written anything in the boxes themselves. That is kind of the next step for me, to make sure that I have everything down in these boxes on when I want things done. And the reason that I do that is so that I can just have a broad overview of the year and kind of stopping points throughout the year, making sure that in a month like November, where we all participate in NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, that I'm not super heavy in a lot of extra stuff. We won't be doing a Boomerang and Slingshot or Sunlight Language Arts because we'll be focusing on NaNoWriMo in our home. So I have to kind of shift and adjust things If I decide that books are not going to stay on the list, I will X them off, or I will put them on an alternate list for later in the year if we need more content. All of that kind of stuff gets put in this yearly plan. And just getting things organized is nice so that I don't have to think of which book it is. I can just go to the next book on the shelf. That is very helpful for me. The next thing that I do is I start to organize all of my instructor's guides. Now, I know that with Sunlight, you can combine your kids. They have age ranges. We have combined my older two in a lot of the levels over the years, but we got to a point where everybody kind of needed their own level, and that is totally fine. And I will share how we manage that shortly. But the next thing that I needed to do was really sit down and figure out how I want to organize my instructor's guides. I did share another vlog where I went through a lot of that information. I shared some of my concerns about having so many instructor's guides this year. I think that I have narrowed it down to, I'm probably going to leave the teacher guides in the big Sunlight binders, but I am going to bind my high schoolers' instructor's guides. They come with student guides. Jack is doing level 100, Emma is doing level 300. So I'm going to bind those with my coil binding machine. I will do the history and Bible in one book and then the literature in a second bound with a coil book. I don't know how to say that, but I think I'm going to do it in 6 or 9 week increments instead of doing the whole instructor's guide. Although the whole instructor's guide, I guess, would not be that bad if I separate out the history / Bible and the literature portions. But I think I am still going to do fewer weeks. It'll probably be 9 weeks. I don't think that 6 weeks would be enough paper to really be on the coil. And I'm going to do that because I will be able to refer to the student guide as we're going throughout our discussion. I don't necessarily need to have the teacher guide in front of me, and I will share why in just a second. So as long as I have that information available to put in my teacher planner when I'm doing my weekly planning, I don't need to pull out all of those instructor's guides all of the time. There are several ways to use the Sunlight instructor's guides. I think that you could probably go in just each morning and do a brief reading of the notes to the parents in the instructor's guide and go on with your day and follow their schedule and do just fine. You could do it weekly where you kind of give yourself a good overview of what's coming up for the week, and then you don't have to refer to the instructor's guide so much. But the way that I actually do it is I will look at about 6 weeks at a time, and I do that during my monthly reset day. I have many videos on how to implement a monthly reset, as well as what I do in my monthly reset, kind of like day in the life or vlogs of me going through what my monthly reset is. I'll leave a link to the playlist for that. But what I will do is on my monthly reset day, I will look at the next 6 weeks of resources that we're going to be using. I will read all of the notes. I will look at all of the questions. I familiarize myself with everything so that when we're going along, I don't really need to think about all of those notes, all of that extra information, and it's much more organic, I guess, to lead discussion with my kids and to figure out how much they know. We do a lot of narration in our home, oral narration, discussion, written narration, writing out answers to the questions. I'm mainly thinking of my older two here, not my youngest, who's just in 3rd grade. You know, you can use the instructor's guides for Sunlight however you want, or any instructor's guide, because curriculum really is just a tool. But I have found that in my family, we really like to read the resources together and have a lot of great discussion. We bounce a lot of different ideas. We all have different viewpoints. It's a lot of fun to home educate older kids. I really enjoy it. I think that my kids bring up really interesting points, and it's fun to kind of see the light bulb click when they solidify different opinions and whatnot. So I have organized most of my instructor's guides. I still have Jack's level 100 that I need to go through. And actually in the video that I organized all of my instructor's guides, I was talking about level 300, not knowing if I was going to use I don't know if you can see it right here, the Modern History and Pictures, which is the new spine, or no, I won't be able to move over enough, or the old spine, which I also have, which is an advanced placement world history book. I think after I've been looking through all of the notes that I am going to stick with this Modern History and Pictures book. I like how they've laid it out in the instructor's guide. I like how they go over each decade and important events that have happened. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun to go through with my oldest. So I'm going to continue to use that. And then if for some reason I want to look for some extra information, I will start with that advanced placement world history book first because I already have it. So once I have all of my books in order, I have all of my instructor's guides put together in the right order, the next thing that I do is I will look for audiobooks on Hoopla. Now Hoopla, if you do not know, is a free service through my library where everybody with a library card can check out, I think it's 10 books a month. So what I will do is I will go through and see what audiobooks are available for the books that we are required to read for the coming year. And this is a huge part of how I am able to do multiple levels in one year. I love to read with my kids. I love to read aloud to my kids and to partner read with my kids and do a lot of actual physical reading. However, with Sunlight, the sheer volume of books is very challenging if you are using more than one level. And so in order for me to continue to work through it, I use audiobooks as a help. Now, part of that is because my kids really learn well when listening. They learn really well when reading, physically reading as well, but they are not super fast readers unless they are reading fiction that they choose for themselves. When they are reading books for learning for school, it can be a little bit more challenging. I'm mainly talking about the history books for the high school levels. I'm not talking about the literature. They will read all of their literature selections. Sometimes I will have Emma do some audiobooks if we are getting behind. For instance, last year, in the fall, we were so busy that we were getting behind in some of the reading, so I had her listen to a couple of books instead of physically reading them. It gave us a little bit more space in our days. So luckily, for the high school levels, a lot of the books are really well-known books. I do have curriculum choice videos if you're interested, if you haven't seen those and you want to see all of the books that we'll be using this year. I will leave links for those. But having the option for the audiobook is super helpful. It's helpful for me because if I am very unfamiliar with a book and I really want to know more about it, I can listen to it myself before I don't have to physically read it. That helps a lot because I can listen to a book while I'm doing, chores or cleaning the house or other things. So that is the next step. I always go through and see what books are available on audio. Sometimes there's a really great narrator, and even though I want my kids to be physically reading books, if it's a really great narrator, I think that having the option to listen to it on audio is so great. And it's also helpful because, my daughter goes out a lot. My older two both go out a lot to do run walks, and so they can listen to audiobooks while they're doing that. And it's just nice to be able, that's like one of those things where you can do a little bit of multitasking. If you're having to do something mindless, you can listen to an audiobook, and I just think that that's a really great idea. And then once everything is organized, that is the time to really start to deep dive on the materials that you will be using for the new year. What I do is I really spend a ton of time in the summer, making sure that I am super familiar with the resources that we're going to be using. I do a big overview. I kind of touch on the spines of the different resources that we're using. I will make sure that I have a really firm understanding of about the first quarter of work, especially if they are books that I am unfamiliar with. I do a lot of research. I spend a lot of time doing that. And I guess it's not it's not so much time that it is unbearable, but I do put in a lot of work on the front end so that my weeks just kind of go and we can just move on to the next thing without having to spend so much time with me making sure I understand the material. And that continues. I will do about the first 9 weeks, really deep dive, read through all of the notes, make sure that I take notes if I need them. It doesn't take that much time to do that, but I find that when I do that, it's fresh in my mind. So I know where we're going as we start our homeschool year. And then within each monthly reset day that I have, I've already marked those on my calendar. I already know when all of those days are. I will make sure that I sit down and look at the next 6 weeks. Now, that could mean that I am looking at 6 completely new weeks, or it could mean that we are not as far ahead as I expected to be at a particular point in time. And so I already have reviewed 3 weeks and I just need to look at the next 3 weeks. So it kind of just depends on how the year is going, what resources I am looking at in a given month. But I've realized that when I take that time to make sure that I understand what the kids are going to be working through and I know the specific points that the materials are making or that I want to focus on within the different resources we're using, our days they go so much more smoothly because I know what the kids are reading. I know what I think they need to focus on, and I'm able to hold a conversation or a discussion with the kids. I'm able to prompt them. We don't necessarily answer every single question the way that it is laid out in the instructor's guides, but I am comfortable enough with my own knowledge of the materials to make sure that they are understanding what needs to be understood and learning the things that I find important and valuable. And so that's kind of the next step for me, is going over all of that material, making sure that I have a good firm grip on what we're going to be learning. You do not need to do the same level of prep in your homeschool as I do. I really enjoy research. I really enjoy learning. And so for me, this is a lot of fun. And I feel like it really adds to our experience as homeschoolers. And it adds to my own knowledge base, which I really do feel as though I am learning so much more than I ever learned when I was going to public school, all through my public school years, including college. Now I am able to grasp different concepts. Part of that is just, life experience, but it's a lot of fun for me to do this. You can, like I said earlier, you can just go in, read your notes for the day and follow the grid. And I know there's so many different curriculums that you can do that with, not just Sunlight. They give you a schedule and you just move to the next lesson. And yes, you may have a little bit of prep work ahead of time, but you don't need to go to the level of prep that I do. I do that so that I'm able to have a great conversation and discussion with my kids about the material. It's just what has worked well for us over the past 12 years, and that's why I continue to do it. So after you have familiarized yourself with all of your materials, you know kind of the big picture of where you want to be, the things that are going to be happening each month of the year, that's when you can really start to figure out how you want to structure your year. And this is kind of the second part of the video, how to structure your homeschool year, which I was going to make into a separate video, but I'm going to kind of give you an overview of my thoughts for this year based on past experience, based on last year, which was a real struggle year for us. So the first thing that you really need to do is figure out when you want to have your vacations. When do you want to have days off? Do you want to school when the public school is going? Or do you want to do year-round homeschooling? Or do you want to do something completely different? So in my home, we started doing year-round homeschooling, I think maybe in 2013. I think that was when we first started year-round homeschooling. I realized that for us, it just made more sense to take smaller chunks of time off when we wanted to, instead of taking a huge 3-month break in the middle of the year. We like to take time off from Thanksgiving to New Year's. We really like to have that big chunk of time, and so year-round homeschooling allows us to do that. Now, there are two types of year-round homeschooling, I would say. The first is where you just roll to the next level of whatever resources you're using for your kids. And this is something that I did when my oldest two were in the elementary years. When they would finish a math book, we would take a week off and then we would just start the next math book. But as my older two have gotten older, we have done more of having a full year to work on a year's worth of resources. And that's kind of been a shift over the past couple of years for us, probably about 4 years, that we have been shifting to this more, this is the course for the year and we're going to do it over a full year. So I am not rolling my kids as much as I used to. And what that means is that my youngest, who's going into 3rd grade, really hasn't been rolling anything at all, rolling any of her subjects. So she finished her math book in the middle of May, and her level 2B Singapore math book in the middle of May. And if it had been, 6-7 years ago, I would have given her a week or two off, and then we would have started at the beginning of June. But we took, we've taken about 6 weeks off, and we'll be starting up her new math book the 2nd week in July. That's how we will do it. And so I have started having a firm start, or a firm year, from July 1st to June 30th. And so we don't start on July 1st. We're actually starting on July 10th this year. But that just gives us an idea of how to work through our curriculum. And the reason that I treat it this way is because over the past few years, I have put a much larger focus on passion projects in our homeschool. And I have done a few videos about passion projects and how we have kind of been thinking about those, but that has been a big part of how I'm going to structure our homeschool year, is thinking about those passion projects. I know this is probably a little bit confusing. I'm trying to kind of systematically go through everything that I'm planning. But what I do, I set up these pages in my initial setup video. But the next thing on my list is to pick a start date, which we did the 10th. Now, this start day is actually going to be a slow start. And I have done vlogs of our slow starts for the past several years. Essentially what that means is we just pick a couple of subjects to start with. It could be something new. It could be a subject that takes a really long time to get through, such as Emma's Spanish courses, which we do through BJU Press, and they're 180 days of classes, so it does take quite a bit of time. So starting earlier gives us just a little bit more margin within our year. So we're going to do a 6 weeks on, 1 week off schedule. And so we're going to be starting on July 10th. We will go 6 weeks, and that 6-week block of time, that first 6-week block of time, will be our slow start, with the goal of being fully into all of our subjects by probably the 2nd week in August. So I will give us 3 or 4 weeks to get used to new materials, start to have a different rhythm. It's not going to be getting up at 8 a.m. and doing school. It's probably going to be starting school around 10 or 10:30 for a couple of hours. And we will most likely work on, for Lucy, math, reading and writing. For Emma, it will most likely be Spanish and potentially starting chemistry. And for Jack, it will be Japanese and reading most likely for him. Well, I think everybody will be doing reading because I didn't get summer readers this year from Sunlight. So I think I'm going to start everybody on their new books for the year, probably in July as well. And then we will add subjects as we are going through. And then once we come back from our first week off, I guess that would be maybe the last week in August or the first week in September. I'm not, well, let me just count it up for you. Yeah, so the last week in August will be our first week of the new 6-week block. And so I want to make sure that we're back to our normal rhythm at that point, which actually works out well because that's when the public school kids go back to school. So it's a good time to be back in all of our subjects and just into a normal fall school rhythm. What's going to be a little bit different this year is that we are still going to be focusing a lot on our passion projects this year. And the way that we're going to work that is during that 6-week block of time where we're doing all of the mom school stuff, we will have one day a week where we're focusing more on passion projects and less on mom school. So they will still be doing their reading, English, and math, but then they will spend time working on their passion project, whatever that may be. And a passion project can be anything. I know that I've had people ask me in the past, what passion projects do your kids have outside of technology? Well, it could be cooking, it could be sewing, it could be some sort of craft type thing, it could be some sort of small business that they want to start, it could be Legos, it could be making a movie. Whatever it is, you would have to talk to your child, your individual child, and figure out what kind of a project they want to work on. And so I will sit down with my kids probably over the next week or so. I've already mainly talking about my older two here. I've already talked to my older two a little bit about some different ideas. So they will choose something that they want to work on throughout the 6 weeks. And then that 7th week is a week where we take off from all of our regular curriculum, but the kids are still working on their passion project. And the reason that it's still a break for them because they're not doing math and reading and English and all of those things, or history or personal development or whatever it is, and they get to deep dive on whatever that passion project they've been working on over the past 6 weeks to finish it up or to figure out what the next step is. This relates a lot to goal setting for my kids. It relates a lot to time management for my kids. Some of those executive function skills that I'm teaching them, again, mainly my older two, it gives them a chance to kind of break out of the typical homeschool curriculum. Now, I don't want you to think that my kids never get a break because they have plenty of breaks. They do not need to do school all day long, 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday. That's not something that we do. Sometimes my daughter does not finish school until 5 o'clock, and that is because she has taken a 3.5-hour chunk of time in the middle of the day and done something different. But my goal always is to have my kids do the mom school in the morning, and then around 1 o'clock after lunch, they have time to work on their passion projects. So, okay, this is probably quite confusing. So the 6 weeks on, 1 week off. During the 6 weeks, they will definitely have one day where they're able to work on their passion project. Perhaps it's cooking. So week 1, they might make a box mix of muffins or brownies or a cake or something. Week 2, they might make a pie with a pie crust from the store. Week 3, they might learn how to make pie crust. And week 4, they might make a pie all from scratch, something like that. And then in the week that they have off, they may end up doing a dessert tasting where they spend a couple of days making a bunch of different desserts and then having friends over to taste test everything, whatever it is. Or it could be Emma is really interested in creating her own stickers and designing her own stickers right now. So she has been drawing a lot on paper and then trying to transfer that to whatever resources she uses online, which is typically through the Adobe Creative Cloud, which they have great sales for student discounts. I'll leave a link for that in the description box. We love using the Adobe Creative Cloud. It is expensive, but all of my kids use it, and I also use it, so it's well worth the money, in my opinion. But you know, there are other free services like Canva or PicMonkey or other free resources that you can use for design work as well. So they will choose a project. They will talk to me about the project, and I will help them come up with some steps that they can take throughout the 6 weeks to kind of make progress on that project. And then on the 7th week, they will have a good foundation and be able to continue that work, you know, as much as they want. And when it's a passion project, they want to work on it. They want to spend their time working on it. It is not, it's not work because it's a passion. Even though it is work, it's whenever you're doing something that you love doing, it doesn't feel like work. And that's the main thing. So it gives their brains a break from the school and the history and the discussion type stuff that we normally do, and also gives them a chance to explore new interests as well as have some projects to work on throughout the year. So that's how we're going to kind of go through our year this year. We are still planning on taking Thanksgiving to New Year's off. We do that every year. November is going to be NaNoWriMo. So even though we take Thanksgiving to New Year's off, we are still working on our NaNoWriMo. Not on Thanksgiving, but the rest of November. And then in December, we are officially off from regular school. But again, my kids work on passion projects, and they also create, write, and like perform and do an entire play. They have done that for the past 3 years, and it's a lot of fun for me to watch them work together creatively, all 3 of them. So they will continue to do that. And my hope is that the way that I'm structuring this year, I will not get overwhelmed with all of the things that I want them to do. And that's kind of that's kind of where I'm at the moment. I know that I have all of these resources down here on the second shelf, actually, and on this shelf that I want to go through with the kids. And I am one of those people that just tries to fill in a lot of stuff. I want them to constantly be learning. I want them to constantly be experiencing new things and working on new projects. But I am having to kind of step back a little bit. Now, when I say that they are going to have 1 day a week where they're going to be working on their passion projects, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so I have 4 days to get through 5 days of work. But what I really need to do is say, okay, I have 4 days and I can do 4 days of work. And so that is kind of a bit of a shift in thinking for me, because typically I will say, okay, well, we're just going to do 5 days of work in 4 days. Now, there may be weeks where we are doubling up on things, especially for Emma with Spanish and chemistry through BJU Press. We have always kind of doubled up on those things throughout the year at certain points, just because it's a lot of work. And if you miss 1 day, it kind of like sets you back, and we don't want to be doing Spanish next November. They do give you 20 months to complete their courses, the online courses. So that's really great. And they are very full, heavy courses, but we try to just double up, you know, for a section of the year so that we are still able to finish on time. So this week, when this video goes live, I am going to be focusing on reading through all of the materials. It's the last week in June. I have my monthly reset on Thursday this week, and I am going to sit down and really focus on what I want the kids to be working on for the first quarter of the year. I will go over everything, but I'm really mainly focused on the first quarter. I have already started a little bit of that this past week. Yeah, so that is going to be my focus. And then once we actually are fully into our school year in September, last week in August, beginning of September, things will just move much more smoothly because I already know what's going on. I already have all of the things laid out. I have things in specific months. I know when I want specific books done, when we're going to be dropping some of the Sunlight language arts in favor of Brave Writer book guides. So that is kind of where I'm going to leave off. I hope that this video was helpful to you. I know it's kind of all over the place, but this is me in the thick of it. This is me planning and just sharing kind of some of the thoughts in my head and kind of the process that I'm working through right now. It's very similar to what I've done in past years, although this year I'm trying to make sure that I am not loading myself too heavy on the front end so that we don't get burned out, by Christmas and just be like, ugh. Yes. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you have questions about anything that I talked about, please let me know in the comments, or you can email me. My contact form is always in the description box. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks, guys. Bye.